name is Charles Mays. I was a member of the UAW for 45 years. Had a good career there. Was steward. Some of the positions I held was steward, area committeeman, recording secretary for 25 years, on negotiating committees and several other committees. The first plant I was employed in that was unionized was Hayes International, Birmingham, Alabama. The local union was UAW Local 1155. The charter showed the date, I think, of late 51. My employment date was July of 52. And when I went to work on the second shift started at 3:15. Our first break was 5 o'clock. At that point, a fellow approached me and introduced himself as the shop steward. We'd like for you to join our union. I said, man, that suits me just fine. So I signed a checkoff card so that the company would deduct my dues. And everything was great from there on. During my employment there of 30 years and 6 months, I held the position of shop steward, area committeeman, recording secretary. I was recording secretary for 25 years, served on several negotiating committees and many other committees like veterans and retiree committee and etc. And the local union allowed me to become a volunteer. They shared expenses with me at the United Way. The United Way of Central Alabama had a labor liaison on their staff. And I knew him and he knew me, and I'd been on welfare committees and etc. And so this fellow was getting ready to retire, and he suggested that I apply for that position. And I did, and several other people, good people, applied for it. But this position belonged to the Jefferson County Labor Council. That was the title of it then. And so they set up a committee to select the successor to the liaison retiring. And I went out and I was selected. I became a part of the United Way staff with the title of AFL-CIO Liaison in July of 82. July of 82. As a new and young local union, our struggles were many, naturally. The company was the main problem, but we had some other struggles too. Segregation was still a big issue in the 50s and early and mid 50s, and many of our members were not that responsive to it. They had not been schooled in it, and so that was allocating the job descriptions, coming up with pay scales. These were huge problems because we had a large African American membership, and this was one problem. Even the government, there was some EEOC charges made, and we had to deal with them. But of course, with Walter Reuther and UAW as our backup, that was in our favor because of the reputation the UAW had in fair play for everybody. And so our first contract was a real struggle, and as I said, the job descriptions and allocation of pay, and then the fringe benefits. Fringe benefits were really hard to come by, but we did get some health care in the first contract. That would be probably the highlight of our success in the first negotiations, was the getting the health care and the getting the pay scale up some. I met a very famous leader, Walter Reuther, president of the UAW, international president of the UAW. Very famous man, a lot of notoriety in the desegregation movement, etc., but he was very famous. And I was also privileged to know and to work closely with Barney Weeks. He was the president of the Alabama AFL-CIO. Fine friend, close friend. I enjoyed working with him, and I shall never forget, he called a three-day convention for politics at downtown Birmingham in the old Shriner building. And it was the first desegregated meeting of the Alabama AFL-CIO in history. And I considered it an honor to be a sergeant at arms because we were expecting trouble. Our expectations did not materialize to any large degree. There was some rumbling and fussing, but there was no physical problems, which we had dreaded. I have a very interesting story to tell about. We had a bitter strike in 1959, and I was, as recording secretary, I was in charge of setting up the picket rosters and getting all that stuff straightened out. So I traveled a lot to different gates and et cetera, et cetera. And I believe it was about the third or fourth week of the strike. I was doing a little work at home in the yard, and I got something in one of my eyes, and it got infected. And the story went throughout the local union that Charlie had been on the scab squad on the road and ended up with a black eye. And so that was a little bit of humor. It was a very bitter and hard strike, but we had, you can always find a little humor if you look for it.